Okay. When you're forced through astral rape to exploit someone else's religion, you can absolutely destroy it. So one of the many experiences you might have when you're navigating the multiverse is a tiny subset within it, which includes the imaginal constructs invented by drug users between about the years 1600 and about 1940, called the sephirot. Okay, so junkies from Europe invented a crappy map that doesn't make any sense. Okay, the crappy map contains these circles on it that have all these staccato, flat characters that don't act with the fullness of real people. They're like stuck programs, and each one of them is more moronic than the fucking next. They're not universes. When you're interacting with the multiverse properly, it's not like that. It is a massive experience, and it's very complicated. When they've tried to say that sephirots are universes, they've actually underestimated the size and complexity of a single universe, and even tried to suggest that a universe was a person, which couldn't be further from the truth. A person can experience the multiverse as well as experience the staccato, very limited worldview, stupid programs that come from the false map known as sephirot. And one of the reasons why they might do that is because in dealing with the multiverse, on the way there, there's people around you. So you're dealing with multiple levels. You're dealing with universes in the proper sense of the term. You're dealing with solar systems in the proper sense of the term. Again, not esoteric intent. You're also dealing with the people around you, and some of the people that came through were imprinted with this thing called, apparently it's called the tree of life or tree of death. So they were given a false map. So all forms of the tree of life or tree of death system are false maps. Sephirots don't refer to universes or people. They refer to programs and stereotypes about individuals as shards, and often they're demonic, including on the tree of life, based on sexist and racist stereotypes, crap mathematics, no comprehension of psychology whatsoever, no comprehension of multiverse theory whatsoever, and the purpose of it is to keep people in lockstep with dead religions, societies, and language groups from medieval Europe that no one's interested in, so that when it interacts with the blue crystal grid and the transhuman agenda, the military can program the world to suit their interests. So the New Age movement and Kabbalah and stuff like that is a means by which they have been engaging in astral abuse of people with negative entities for the purposes of covering up soul theft and trying to teach people enormous amounts of stupidity, ignoring and even trying to countermand their efforts of greatness, because their languages, coming from the New Age movement, coming from Christianity, coming from Kabbalah-based religions, is based on stupidity. It's not based on honesty. It's based on stupidity. Okay? It's based on dishonesty, and it's based on stupidity. Okay? They don't understand the word simulation. They don't understand the word universe. They don't understand the word multiverse. They don't understand the word planet. They don't even understand the word spaceship. They don't even understand the word artificial intelligence. Okay, they haven't been comprehending that. The level of programming that the New Age movement is operating at is so low when it comes to psychology, when it comes to human behavior and the sciences, that it's no surprise that the US military, which in particular is an example of an organization that has 30 years head start on everyone else technologically. So when you're walking around going fucking Musk and fucking Bezos and all them dickheads have got some serious fucking tech on fucking people, well, wait until you see the US military. So what's the purpose of the US military? Just like any military organization, its purpose is to control abuse, dominate, deceive, manipulate, use fear-based mind control tactics, and live in a state of stereotyping. So when you see a soldier walking around, he's in a repressed state. He's walking around, he's acting like he's a fucking robot. Okay? And he's in a fucking repressed state. Isn't it no surprise that later on they tried to turn soldiers into actual robots, eh? The breach of their basic sovereignty and human rights. And, of course, when it comes to certain types of situations, the community at large as well. So the AI transhuman agenda began in 2003. The predecessors of it, obviously, 1970s, right? Crap like that. It goes back further than that. But the actual formalisation of the agenda and its inception begins with a paper by Nick Bostrom in 2003. Now, Mr. Bostrom wasn't trying to promote the AI transhuman agenda when he did that. What he was trying to do was articulate an idea based on the fact that he smoked too much marijuana when he watched The Matrix a few years before. Okay, so he was trying to say that he was high as a kite and he thought it was funny. Here's an idea. He just happens to know people because in the sociology of science, it's not what you know, it's who you know that fucking counts. Which is why you got Sam Beckett posing as a psychiatrist when he's actually a physics dropout from the 1970s. He got diagnosed with psychopathy and read a couple of books after that and was good enough at talking and knew the right people to do a TEDx talk. Okay? He's not actually qualified at all. Okay? People with actual psychology qualifications could be appearing to you as fugly old mates. And know that guy's using buzzwords. Know that the New Age movement's using buzzwords. Know that other groups are using buzzwords. And maybe even able to clarify some of them. Some people with psychology majors or whatever, even showed an interest in the overlap of how perception relates to those things. They might be familiar with ideas of the microwave auditory effect, which, by the way, in some cases was taken out of context by conspiracy theorists or whatever, but it isn't necessarily the case at all. Because when they became aware of that in 1948, that was an opportunity, and it was the US military that became aware of it. It provided them with an opportunity for technological manipulation. And of course, that temptation is something they typically fall into quite readily. So part of that involves trying to tell people that your skull is too thick to absorb radio waves or something like that. That's crap. Your skull's thinner than a brick wall, but you're still getting this message on your device through it. So whatever. Don't believe a word of it. Okay, yeah, before it's protection. There are other reasons that make it difficult, but that don't mean it's 100%. And so, what you'll probably find is like the convenient lies that people have been told by the New Age movement, by Christianity, by the military, by different religious sects and groups are to keep people in a state of fear to do seer on them. Okay, so the US military is doing seer when they do that. Christianity is doing seer. So my labs are a faction of the military groups in the world that are Christianized, and they come from the duality of you've got to do their false map of Kabbalah, or you've got to do Christianity, with both are lies. Both are seer. Okay, so what's seer? Seer is a word that comes from Islam. Not actually a Muslim, but it is a word that comes from Islam that refers to bad wizardry. So Christianity is bad wizardry. Okay? Okay. Back 2,000 years ago, when they reckon that Jesus' character lived, who's fictional, by the way, okay, they spoke Aramaic in Judea. They didn't speak Hebrew. Hebrew didn't exist yet. They spoke Aramaic. Okay, so the Aramaic, so was the name Joshua an Aramaic name? Well, no, it's a Hebrew name. And that got translated into Jesus or Jesus through Spanish. Okay? There's no, etymologically, in terms of language, there's no reason to believe that if that man existed, that he had that name. Because that name didn't exist back then. There would have been other names that might have been similar, predecessor names, just the same as there are names that people use today that are even older than that. Okay? But just bear that in mind for a second. Just how many lies the Seer Christian faction has been telling you. Just how many lies the military groups have been telling you. And just how much they've misused psychology, misused physics and language from that to perpetrate a false map called the tree of life, tree of death system to try and get people to accept patriarchy, to accept astral abuse, to accept imposter spirits, which is all a situation that the New Age movement has created by not comprehending multiverse theory, by not comprehending what the word simulation actually means when they're talking about black holes. Okay? Or anything. What the word simulation means in physics is not what the New Age movement is saying. What the word universe and multiverse means in physics is not what the New Age movement is saying. When they talk about New Age neuroplasticity in the New Age movement, they're not talking about it the way it's talked about in neurology. When they use the word DNA, they're not talking about DNA. Okay? When they talk about spaceships, they're not talking about spaceships. Okay? Their language is a lie, a buzzword lie. Every single time you deal with it, it's a buzzword lie. They're not referring to any of the things that those cultures or sciences or whatever originated, where they stole those words from. Okay? Okay, the New Age movement is cultural misappropriation. Okay? It is a rape cult based on cultural misappropriation. And the cultural misappropriation ideas they got from Christianity, which in turn they got from the Romans, and the Jews, and the ancient Greeks. Now let's talk about what Judaism is and isn't to clarify this up. The word Kabbalah allegedly comes from mystical Judaism, as in rabbis in Europe from the Renaissance period. It's not actually practiced by Jews more generally, and it is quite distinct from ethnic Judaism. So someone who's an ethnic Jew is not necessarily a religious Jew. Okay, they have ancestors who can be traced back to Judea, perhaps from when the Sephardics left and the Hasidics left, or something like that. That's usually what that means. Okay, and okay, so they're not necessarily religious. They can be atheists. They could be agnostics. Sometimes they're Hindus. Okay, the point is that you need to, even if you're going to do that, you need to understand what Judaism is and isn't. Okay, don't have a lot of information about Judaism, but can tell you just enough to let you know where they're screwing you over. The Kabbalah that they are using in the New Age movement is not Jewish Kabbalah. That's the first point you need to know. Okay, they've done a smear campaign by taking the Hebrew letters and whatever else. Okay, but that's not Jewish Kabbalah. Okay, getting people on TV claiming they're a rabbi when they're talking about astrology are breaking Mosaic law. It's very clear in the Pentateuch as well as the Talmud and Torah that divination is against the law of Moses, and astrology is classified as a type of divination. Therefore, you wouldn't do astrology. So they're bullshitting about that one too. So you got pretenders on the TV as well. Okay, you got pretend psychologists and pretend psychiatrists, and you got pretend Jews as well. Okay, there's a lot of fibbers out there. Here's another thing you need to know. Okay, today is not. Okay, the word Sheol. Okay, loosely translated as Hades, but not meaning the same thing. Hades, as it comes from ancient Greeks, is the place of punishment in the underworld involving evil Pluto and his rape of Persephone. Right? Okay? And Hephaestus there under the volcano, manufacturing the weapons for the gods of Mount Olympus. It's an ancient Greek idea. That's not what Sheol is in Judaism. In Judaism, Sheol is a place of transition, to move from one place to the next, the room between rooms. Take a ticket, stand in line, off you go. Just keep moving. That's it. The Catholic Church, when it was first founded by the Roman Empire in about 400 AD, about 400 AD, Emperor Constantine has founded Christianity as a way to rebrand the Roman Empire, which was failing from too many rebellions. And one of the things they've done is because the philosophers in the previous 400 to 500 years, called the Hellenistic period, included characters like Aristotle, for example, not Epicurus. The idea Epicurus came up. No, Epicurus was completely different. He was even from a different time period. But anyway, so people like Aristotle and whatever, the thinkers of their day, the Greek academies exerted influence on Rome, okay? In a similar way that Babylon was like a place of astronomy and that the ancient Egyptians relied on. So they were actually two separate places, but intellectually the Babylonians influenced the Egyptians. In a similar way, the Greeks influenced the Romans academically. So the political prowess and economic prowess came from the Egyptians. And the Babylon had its own version of that, but was technically a smaller one and it favoured academic stuff. Ancient Greece was a bit similar. They favoured academic stuff, weren't known for military might. That was the Romans. And so the Romans have invented the New Testament after the time of Constantine, so the time based on those discussions, and the Vatican was founded with ideas like from Aristotle and stuff like that. Okay, there was no author. They found no authors contemporary to 2,000 years ago that suggested there was a man named Joshua who was crucified. And considering how common that name is supposed to be, that's really quite bizarre. Other than the fact that they spoke Aramaic, they're not Hebrew. So the name Joshua didn't exist. Yeah. So the name didn't exist 2,000 years ago. The practice of crucifixion was a brutal type of bullying that the Roman Empire was known for. Ideologically, it seems like Constantine probably was more motivated to tell the Huns, the Visigoths, the Celts, and the people of Judea and other Roman provinces and people of Britannia and stuff as well, you're all crucified. Okay, so the ideological imprinting of people with the everyone's been crucified because the Spirit of Christ lives within, and he was crucified. Yada yada yada. Okay, means you've all been crucified. So that part you can get when some members of the New Age movement talk about like that part actually makes sense. However, some of them then turn around and say the negative aliens from outer space did that to people. It's like, well, no, they didn't. It was the Roman Empire. And it was an ideological imprint. Okay? So, the way that movement's tried to create false imprints to overlay on top of that is insane, okay? Aliens from outer space are not a hierarchy, okay? They do, some of them will have hierarchical social orders, that's true. But they are not the boss of humanity. There is a massive jurisdictional problem with that to start off with. Because they're from outer space. So why the heck would they have any jurisdiction at all? Okay, if you've got situations where you've got one country is threatening to go to war with another over a jurisdictional matter when they're next door to each other and half of their population is freaking related and the languages are even similar, Why the heck would an alien from outer space be a boss for? It's obviously crap. So, so multiverses, okay? Multiverses exist, okay? It is possible to access the multiverse, but a multiverse is not a sephirot. When you're interacting with a sephirot, okay, you're interacting with a cultural program that is trying to create flatland type people who are based on stereotypes and false demographics, particularly when it's interacting with AI. Have a nice day.